Hi, good evening. And every Sunday at 8 p.m. London time at ZP, we like to do a webinar for our for the news for this week. So this is a sort of retrospective look at the week. So today's the June the 6th, and this is a look back at the news from the week starting the 31st of May 2021. So let me sort of essentially dive straight into it. Now, the first thing that I'm actually going to say is we have our ZP Developer Zone webinar, and we do a presentation to the members every week. And so I'm actually going to answer some of the questions from that from the ZP Developer Zone this week. So forgive me if I'm also going to do some technical material this week. First thing I want to just say is we're going to start stepping up our newsletter a lot more. So at ZP in the past, we've had a newsletter. We haven't been publishing it regularly of recent, but we're definitely now going to step it back up. So if you're interested in kind of getting the news from ZP just once a week straight into your inbox, we'll put sort of material in there that's not available elsewhere. Then please subscribe to our ZP newsletter, and I'll make sure that I put a link. We're trying to sort of link to it so people can find this newsletter pretty soon. Now the next thing I'll just discuss is, as I say, we have a very active developer zone, and we do get some good technical questions that come through the developer zone. So thank you very much for all the people who ask questions there. The Developer Zone, we do a webinar every Thursday at 8 a.m. London time, and that is often driven by the forum. Now, since the forum has become quite popular, we've started to now increase the amount of material, we're starting to increase the amount of material then that we're having to take out that webinar and bring to this podcast and vlog. So we appreciate the fact that many of you now are watching both the 8 a.m. ZP Developer Zone webinar, and you're following this 8 p.m. on a Sunday vlog as well. So we had a question come in this week into the forum, and the question was really about the inhibition of PCR, that's polymerase chain reaction. So I'm just going to say a quick hello to one of our members. So just a quick, so the forum, we had a question that came through in the forum, and the forum asked the question, the gentleman or the inquirer is using an ISFET sensor, and that's an ion selective field effects transistor. And he was asking the question that he's historically been using a chlorinated silver wire as the reference electrode, but they have actually been going over to silver chloride and platinum recently, and they've been having some issues and they're asking the question, I've been using this ISFET as a reference. I've been using a chlorinated silver wire. I've gone over to the ZP silver chloride ink or paintable ink, and then he says, have we got any evidence or any knowledge about it inhibiting PCR? So I'm gonna answer that question this evening, and then just do some normal news. So just a kind of way of background, there's many sort of materials you can use for a reference electron in biosensing. Yeah, I think I went offline for a second there, so hopefully not a complete disaster for you guys. But yeah, I'm just gonna try and pick up my track. So the inquirer was asking the question, did we have an experience of using the paintable platinum silver chloride as a reference electrode when doing ISFETs with PCR? So they've historically been using a wire, and sorry, and they've been using now this paintable silver chloride ink. Now we had an electrochemical rationale that came from Ali, and Ali was, you know, rightly saying, you know, the first thing to do, you know, if you're trying to answer the question, do we know whether an ink can inhibit action? It's really kind of useful to actually know, you know, what is the source of the signal. I seem to be going offline again in a minute, so I apologize if that's maybe I'm coming back on again. Right. So Ali's been asking the question. No, sorry. Ali was basically saying to him on the forum, you know, you have to use, you have to tell us what the source of the signal is, and he was also asking the question, well, possibly if you change the reference, then you might need to optimize again. So I definitely, I apologize this evening. I might be having some internet issues. Right. Right. So that was the electrochemical rationale, that there might actually be a bit of a, if you change the reference, then you might have to basically optimize the gate voltage again. So what I will do is, I'll carry on, but I do seem to be having some internet issues this evening, so I apologize for that. Now it's worth saying that Ali has actually done a really nice video on ISFETs. So there is, you know, you can find Ali's video through this link on our website, but it's a really good introduction to ion sensitive field effect transistors. So I do appreciate the fact that Ali did work. Now I'm going to jump really back into the question, and the question was, do we have any experience of silver chloride inks inhibiting PCR? And so let me answer that question. First of all, you know, we are quite experienced with PCR at ZP. You know, we appreciate that PCR is a fairly good way of rationalizing, or not rationalizing, but of identifying microbes and bacteria and things like that. So we're quite used to sort of, you know, using these buffers and these primers and these polymerases and these nucleotides, and we go through the sort of PCR. I mean, I'm showing a sort of almost traditional PCR, and we appreciate that there's isothermal PCR techniques, but where you take the DNA, you anneal it to form the single strand, you add a primer, you add the polymerase, and then, you know, in the presence of these nucleotides, you're able to form the corresponding strand, and then you can anneal. So we're quite used to at Zimmer Peacock having or using PCR as part of biosensing. I'm just going to do a quick note. Just write a quick note. You could be dropping the internet, but Ali's been kind enough to say that it's staying up. So the original question that I was dealing with was, the inquirer said, look, I've been using a chlorinated silver wire with my PCR reaction and my biosensor development. Everything seems to be pretty good. But then he is saying that, my goodness, I think I'm losing the internet again. But then he's in the literature. There's also quite good literature precedents as well. That silver ions can actually in fact inhibit PCR. So it's not an amazing surprise to us that people do have problems. The thing about PCR type and sort of molecular biology reactions, they are quite sensitive. You can sort of, it's not a funny joke. I was going to say you can sneeze on them and that will stop them, but of course if you sneeze on them, then you'll contaminate them. But yeah, we're not surprised to hear about people have issues, let's say. It's worth saying there at Zimmer and Peacock, we do have this large range of screen printed electrodes, and we're quite experienced at bringing them into molecular biology type experiments. And what we're doing is, we'll take we won't start off by doing a biosensor straight away. We'll actually just start by doing PCR in tubes. So we'll do the polymerase chain reaction actually in a tube, and we'll add in a sample of the material. So for example, we might add in a section of one of our screen printed electrodes. So our intention is actually to move the PCR reaction onto the screen printed electrode, but before we do that, we'll actually screen the materials to make sure that they're compatible by just taking a tube, putting in some screen printed electrode, that's the test, and then we'll run a control where we don't put in this, for example, the screen printed electrodes, and we'll put them through both through PCR. Now what we're hoping is that we'll get a positive result with a control and we'll get a positive result with a test, and that tells us our material is good. It's very rare that the test completely fails, but it's not unusual that new materials can in fact inhibit the PCR reaction. So the questioner was asking whether we had experience of using our silver chloride inks in things like PCR reactions. The quick answer is we do, and we have experienced different materials inhibiting PCR. I think life is always a balance, because obviously, the development of a molecular biology biosensor is a good thing. It can essentially allow you to take PCR, which is a lab-based procedure, and move it out into the field. When I say out into the field, out into the sort of world in a sensing application. But yes, it does need optimizing. So we at ZP do screen our materials, and we can do PCR on top of our reference electrodes, but we also see that many materials that are associated with screen printed electrodes do inhibit they do inhibit the PCR. So it's not that they kill the PCR, but it does inhibit the PCR. So I must apologize. I felt like I was having a few connection issues this evening, so that became a bit jumpy. Ali who was watching online was kind enough to say that you could still hear me, so thanks for the confirmation. But I'll just do a quick summary. So we have the ZP developer zone. The forum question came up. The forum questioner was saying, I've been using a chlorinated silver wire and everything is good. He says, now I've gone over to the painted silver chloride, but it seems to be inhibiting my PCR. And we would say that we do PCR type experiments on top of screen printed electrodes. We do it a lot, and sometimes we do find that PCR can be inhibited by some of the materials, but we find that it doesn't kill the PCR. It does inhibit and sort of slow up the PCR. So if you're looking for confirmation that sometimes you do have an issue, then I can definitely confirm that, and I can also confirm that it's obviously known in the literature as well that it wasn't very hard to find that silver nanoparticles, I would say, or silver particles can inhibit PCR. So yes, is the answer to your question. So what I'm going to now do is I'm just going to slip gears slightly, or change gears, and I'm going to actually go into sort of doing more of a let's say more of a news section for this week. So I just want to do a quick roundup of some of the things that have happened this week. I would like to say that we are doing a webinar on the 22nd of June. It's at 2 p.m. Central European time, which is, if you're in Asia, is about 7 p.m. in the evening. We're doing it with USN, so we've got very strong ties to USN in Norway. And yeah, we're going to do a webinar with one of the professors there. If you're interested, it's free to register, and I hope you can come along. We'll be talking more about MEMS, which I think MEMS and biomems fits more with ISFET, which is also a topic of this evening. So yeah, please come along to that. That's some of the news that we've got this week. This is hopefully interesting. we are obviously very much associated with, there's a World Congress on Biosensors. I know this was first started by a gentleman called Professor Tony Turner. I've known Tony for at least a decade, and he has this sort of biannual conference on biosensors. I would say it's one of the sort of leading academic conferences on biosensors. So I'm glad to say that that we're actually going to give the opening talk at this year. They're doing a workshop they're doing a workshop before it starts, and ZP is chairing that, and it will be around. It will be on the topic of commercializing biosensors. So that's just some news that we will be doing that this year. Some other news from ZP just this week. I know I talk about this quite a lot, but I just wanted to kind of highlight that in Italy, on one of the sort of major TV channels, one of our good friends, Exhalation, who's made a system for analyzing COVID-19 on the breath. They actually made the national news. So the TV did this, this whole compare and contrast between nasal swabs and throat swabs, and then they featured the corona check, and showed it being used in hospitals. So it was really nice, and the professor there gave a very nice comments about the corona check. So that was really kind of nice to see that some of your work ends up in hospitals, and actually helps with clinicians, essentially doing their work. So we were delighted with that. Just some other news from this week. We've also been making these flow cells. So at ZP, we're known for biosensors, and it's interesting that people like Ali, who actually have a sort of background in the food industry, for example, we also end up making flow cells. Flow cells are quite good if you're doing sort of continuous monitoring of, let's say, food production. Sometimes you have to bring the sample to the sensor. So at ZP, we're distributors for things like peristaltic pumps, and we also make the flow cells so that the biosensors can actually go into the flow cells. So I think something that makes Zimmer Peacock a little bit different is, you see me and I speak, and I'm a chemist, I'm an electrochemist, but we actually have a lot of really good mechanical and electronic engineers, and so it was kind of, they put together things like flow cells that we think are like amazing, but for an engineer, these things are fairly straightforward. So we're really happy with the strength of the team. So we just put some little bit of news out about a flow cell that the guys had manufactured this week. I caused a bit of confusion this week as well. So we make screen printed gold electrodes, and it was just interesting to contrast that we ended up using 2 inks to make screen printed electrodes, and you could really see a difference in the cyclovoltammetry of the 2 inks. One of them was, the reproducibility was great. The gold one, there's about 6 sensors here, and they're absolutely on top of each other, which I'm really proud of, because at Zimmer & Peacock there's so many people who are sometimes dismissive of screen printed electrodes because they order 50 screen printed electrodes from a company, they test them all, they're all wildly different, and therefore they think, oh, that's the problem with screen printed electrodes. No, that's just a problem with that manufacturer. But at Zimmer & Peacock, you can see here that we've been experimenting with a couple of golds. So gold 1 was really reproducible, but it doesn't matter in some ways, but you can see that it's actually, if you're watching the video, it's slightly more distorted, and that's when you've got a slightly higher resistance. It's ended up distorting the cyclovoltammetry. And then we got some gold 2, where we got sort of the peaks were closer together, so you would argue, and the signals were higher. Now what's interesting, see, is if you're a purist and you're an academic, you'd say gold 2 was better than gold 1. But the biggest problem in biosensor manufacturing is actually reproducibility. So from a manufacturing reproducibility perspective, gold 1 is better than gold 2. But from a, let's say, classic electrochemical perspective, gold 2 is better than gold 1. But for me, reproducibility in manufacturing always trumps everything else. It doesn't matter to a biosensor really whether your peak separation is 59 millivolts. It really doesn't matter. That's not the thing that's stopping you get to market. What's going to stop you get to market is actually reproducibility. So we just put some because we are geeks at Zimmer and Peacock, and, you know, we like our electrochemistry, we just put some cyclovoltammetry this week up of a couple of goals, just so you can see that not all goals are the same. Now, I made a bit of confusion this week because, but we have actually launched a cortisol sensor. I've put the data up onto the website. I was really quite excited because, to be frank, there is no easily available commercial cortisol sensor on the market, and so we were happy or delighted to make this one available. So ZP a couple of weeks ago launched the fructose sensor. This week we launched a cortisol sensor. Just a little anecdote for you. One of the engineers was driving to work, and he passed one of these buildings, and when he looked at the building, it's hard to see at the moment, but actually just in these green, there's these big ZPs. So this is our new building. It's a bit like a bond layer. It's up on a hill, and so from the hill you can see this big grey building, but it's got ZP on the side. So this is actually our new building. We're keeping all the existing facilities that we have. This is in addition, and the good news is we've actually already filled this building. So we're really thinking about building a second building exactly the same size. So get building 4,000 square meters, fill building 4,000 square meters, need new building 4,000 square meters. So if you're interested in being with ZP and working with ZP, it's an exciting place to be at the moment. I just want to, this is the last bit of news I really wanted to cover this week, which was, so at Zimmer and Peacock, we really believe in, if you ever read our mission statement, you know, it essentially comes down to, you know, we always want to do good, and part of that is making opportunities for everyone, you know, in our global kind of community. And so this week we were delighted that we'd applied to the UK Home Office to be able to sponsor foreign workers, and so we have a grade A status, which I assume means a grade A status to sponsor skilled workers to work in the UK. So at Zimmer and Peacock, you know, our mission statement is to do good. Our mission statement is to provide, you know, great opportunities and essentially great jobs for people. And we absolutely understand that not all of the skilled people that we need in this world are inherently in the USA, where we have some good operations. They're not inherently in Norway, and they're not inherently in the UK. And therefore now we can actually sponsor people to come and work in the UK. So I just wanted to finish with that. So I'll summarize. Apologies, I think I was losing internet a little bit, but Ali was nice enough to say that no, it looked like I was, you were able to hear me, which I'm delighted for. At ZP, we do have experience of SPEs and PCR, so screen printed electrodes with PCR. They do work together. Sometimes you do find that they slightly inhibit the PCR reaction, and it's both our experience and also it's in the literature that silver particles will inhibit PCR. And then we just did the news for this week, you know, just did a quick run through on that. And then on a happy note, we've received a certification from the UK Home Office to allow us to sponsor foreign workers. So you all know who I'm talking to, so just want to let you guys know. All right, well, thanks very much. you were very kind this week because I did feel I was losing the internet. But thanks for listening, and hopefully see you on Thursday. If you have any questions for Zimcock, please join the developers zone. And I just want to, if I was just going to say one last thing, I was going to just say that we are definitely building out now our newsletter a lot more aggressively, or not aggressively, but we're going to be putting out a newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, please do. I will put a link underneath this video, but we'll be putting out a weekly newsletter. We'll try to make sure, well, not try, we will make sure the content's good, and yeah, I appreciate it. So thanks very much, Ali, and guys, and speak to you soon. All right, take care.